What's up, you guys? So for this week's video, we're going to be making the first rice pudding recipe from the first American cookbook. That's right, we're going to be using Amilia Simmons' 1796 cookbook, American Cookery. So follow along. So to start this off, we're going to first make our puff paste. Now, what is this puff paste? Really, it's just a buttery pie crust. Now, what's really awesome about these recipes, especially the older ones, are that they don't really give you that many instructions. So it's assuming that the reader reading them already kind of knows the technique of how to make a pie crust. And being that I've made many a pie crust in the past, I'm pretty much going to use the same technique that I do for all the other ones, where I'm going to make sure all of the ingredients are cold before I use them. Definitely make sure the butter has been in the fridge or even freezer overnight, just so it's super chilled, so I can actually cut it into the flour. Because you don't want the butter to melt in a puff pastry, you kind of want it to just stay solidified. That way, as you bake it, the water will be leaving the butter and puffing up the flour pastry, making it extra soft and fluffy. Now, this recipe is actually really simple. It's only calling for a pound of butter and a pound of flour. Well, I'm actually going to cut that in half and use 228 grams of butter as well as flour. Cut them together as well as 2 egg whites. Now, it does say in the recipe that to use 1 egg white and 1 egg yolk. But if you flip to the back, there's an amendment in the book saying that you should actually only use egg whites for this. So I kind of had to make the call on hand, and I decided to just go with 2 egg whites, just make it simple and not stress about it too much. But after I combine all of those ingredients together, I'm going to sprinkle in some water, just enough so that way it comes together to form a nice dough ball. And after I have that super firm dough ball formed, I'm just going to cover it and put it in the fridge while I make our rice pudding. Now, this rice pudding is, again, incredibly simplistic. Really, it's just rice, milk, cinnamon, nutmeg, and some rose water, as well as some eggs to thicken it. Now, you're probably wondering, when are you going to add in the sugar? And that's just that. There is no sugar in this recipe. Oddly enough, the only seasonings in this entire rice pudding are cinnamon, nutmeg, and the rose water. Now, I've used rose water in the last old cookbook recipe video I made, and I will say this stuff is strong. So whatever they ask you to put in, I usually cut it in half. Otherwise, it's just going to taste too strongly like perfume and give you a bit of a bitter taste. Plus, from the research I've done, rose water nowadays is a lot stronger and more potent than it was back in the 1700s. And after I have all of my eggs cracked and seasoned, I'm going to give it a good whisking, making sure it's well combined and there's no streaks of yellow or no streaks of white still in the mixture. This will make it much smoother in the end. Now, in the 1700s, they weren't actually working with gas stoves. They were really using just campfires and fires in general. So it doesn't really give you that great of an instruction on how to cook your rice. It just says to boil quick. So I'm going to take that as boil it until the rice becomes tender, like what you would do for a rice pudding nowadays. And after you reach the tender state that you want, I'm going to cover it and let it kind of hopefully absorb some of that milk and cinnamon flavor while I roll out the puff pastry and get our pie crust ready. And after I'm done rolling it out to my desired thickness, I'm going to now lay it into our pie mold here. It's also going to be a really well buttered pie mold, because this is going to bake for quite a long time, because you actually bake the rice pudding in with the pie crust all at the same time, which I find very strange, but hey, you know, if it worked for them back then, it'll probably work fine for me today. So after the rice pudding has cooled enough, I'm going to now stir in our eggs. And you don't have to let it cool all the way. Just make sure as you're stirring in your eggs, you do exactly that and you stir it in really well. That way you don't curdle the eggs or create scrambled eggs. But after that, I'm going to put it off to the side and now get my pie crust ready for its final bake. And once again, I am definitely not a food stylist, so I can't really create that nice edge that you might be able to see on other recipe videos, but I do my best. Anyway, I'm going to add in the rice pudding mixture and now bake it. Again, it doesn't really give you very good instructions for how long or at what temperature, so I pretty much just baked it at 350 for about an hour to an hour and a half, something like that, until it's firm throughout. But there you have it. And I will say, one of the things that this is missing is definitely some sugar. It really doesn't have much of a flavor at all, other than rose and cinnamon, but other than that, it was definitely an amazing experiment. Super fun. I'd highly suggest you guys give these recipes a try. I'm hoping to get a few recipe cookbooks from the 60s, maybe even the 20s, just to make them a little bit more modern so I don't have to use any more of that rose water. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, follow me on my social media accounts, and peace.